Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flack.
Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. That is Deuteronomy 31, verse 6, and I'm your host, Sandra Flack. Welcome to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. As always, I'm grateful to have you joining me today as we kick off September and FASD Awareness Month. While this podcast is not solely about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, or FASD, it is a regular topic because of the prevalence of FASD among children and adoptive and foster and even kinship placements. Most of our kiddos are not diagnosed, or they're misdiagnosed with many other alphabet soup of things: ODD, ADHD, PTSD, ASD, all kinds of other Ds, which may very well be accurate, but it is highly possible that the symptoms are really all of those things come under the umbrella of an FASD. And the symptoms of FASD are very similar to the symptoms, the behavioral symptoms that individuals would exhibit if they've experienced trauma in childhood, which all of our kids who've come in, if we're adoptive or foster or kinship parents and caregivers, our kiddos have experienced some level of trauma. So sometimes we don't know, is this trauma? Is this because of prenatal exposure? Is this because of both? Regardless of exactly what's going on or what is the cause of the symptoms and behaviors that we're seeing, understanding that our kiddos have brain-based differences and understanding how to accommodate them and support them for success goes a long way into helping them thrive and to help our homes be more peaceful and helping us be more regulated. So we talk about it all the time on this show because really it's relative to all of us. And, not even just us in this space. A recent study revealed that 1 in 20 school-age children in the United States has been prenatally exposed. And again, most are not diagnosed, right? That rate, 1 in 20, is higher than autism, which I believe is like 1 in 35 or 36. And yes, a majority of them are in adoptive and foster placements, but this is like at least one kiddo in every classroom, right? So we need to know about it. We need to understand how to support these children so that they can be successful, because they can be. Back in the day when my kids were first diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome, if you went and did an internet search on fetal alcohol syndrome, the things that came up were dark and hopeless. It was like the only thing that it was telling us that we could look forward to is kids that would grow up to become homeless, have mental health problems, have addictions, be incarcerated, or commit suicide. Like, that was the outcome. And I just refused to accept that, even though I didn't know what to do about it. And it took a long time for me to get to where I am today, and understand it and have the professional training that I've received. And now I can not only support my own children and family better, but I can help you. And that is what I am very passionate about doing. So in honor of FASD Awareness Month, the 9th month of the year, because the 9th month of pregnancy, that's why they picked September. But it is FASD Awareness Month. And all throughout the month, I'm going to be bringing you special guests who are FASD experts. And today I'm so excited because we are chatting with a young woman. We've never had her on the show before, and she's a young adult with an FASD, and she just will, we had her as a guest on our in our Hope for the FASD Journey support group. And we were riveted to her story that she was sharing. So I know that you will be riveted as well, whether or not you have a kiddo with an FASD. So we'll be getting to that. But before we do, I want to share some of our resources, especially if you are raising kids who may have been prenatally exposed to alcohol or drugs. So check this one out.
Sandra Flack, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets Neurobehavioral Model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphansny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphansny.org/hope-community.
So as a mom of an 18 and now 21-year-old with fetal alcohol syndrome, like I mentioned before, I've spent years trying to figure out what was going on. We became trauma informed, which is absolutely necessary for all of us. Learned all those great connected parenting strategies, which absolutely do work with our kids. But most likely, if it's FASD, you will reach a point where you're like, we're doing all the things and still we're missing something. Still something is, not right. So we have those resources because you need them for this journey. I offer one-on-one parent coaching for parents or caregivers, and your children do not have to be diagnosed. Many of our support group members, their children aren't diagnosed. The parents know that they know their kiddo has this, but it is really hard to get a diagnosis in the United States. So there are several that do not have, their kids are not diagnosed, but they know what they're, that this is the journey that they are on. So offer coaching sessions, online and in-person workshops. I travel and I speak and I teach. I just recently was at a Christian educators conference where they had me come in and do a couple of breakout sessions. I've spoken at adoptive and foster mom retreats, conferences, all kinds of things like that. So if you're having an event and you're wanting some training in this area, you want to bring me in, I would absolutely love to come to your event as well. So, but I do have online workshops, so you don't have to go to that extent. You can just join me online in Zoom. And so coming up in September, I have 2 Intro to FASD workshops on the calendar. So you can pick either one. The first one is Wednesday, September 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then the other one is an evening. So if you can't do a daytime, maybe an evening. That's Thursday, September 26th at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll go over, how alcohol impacts the developing brain, the symptoms of FASD, primary, secondary, tertiary. And then we'll begin to look at a brain-based approach to parenting and help you build your toolbox with just strategies and ways to help support your kiddos through accommodations and support. So that's all going on with the introduction. It's free. So anybody, whether you're a parent, a caregiver, a grandparent, a school teacher, a volunteer at church, you've got kids in your Sunday school class that have been adopted or foster, in foster care. If you're an adoptive or foster parent, your adult, children who may not understand their adopted sibling. So it's excellent for anybody working with children who are, especially in the adoption and foster care arena, or working with your kiddo who you may know has an FASD. Now, I also offer once or twice a year what I call a deep dive into FASD, and it's 18 hours worth of content broken up over 6 3-hour sessions once a week for 6 weeks. And that is coming up in October. And that's where we use the neurobehavioral model, the Facets neurobehavioral model. It's a brain-based approach. intro that I do is also, incorporates that, but this is unpacking the neurobehavioral model. It's excellent for professionals, for parents and caregivers. Again, anyone working with children. The first session begins on Wednesday, October 2nd at noon Eastern. So it's 3 hours. So that's noon to 3 every Wednesday through November 6th. And we do offer certificates of completion. So if you are a foster parent and you need to, log in some of those extra training hours, or if you are a professional and you need training hours, we do offer CEUs for social workers, but you have to be licensed in New York State because that's where we're certified to give out the CEUs, but everybody gets a certificate of completion. To register for any of these workshops, the parent coaching, the support group, go to our website, justicefororphansny.org. If you want to sign up for one of the trainings that I mentioned, just click the training tab at the top of the page, click FASD, it'll take you there, or click on FASD, and you can see all the information about the support group and the parent coaching, as well as the training. So all of those things, I hope that you will check it out. And of course, subscribe to this podcast, leave a review. We want all adoptive and foster parents and kinship caregivers to be able to access our content. And they're going to be able to find it a whole lot easier if you follow it, like it, follow it, subscribe to it, whatever all those things are that we have to do depending on what platform you listen on. And if you listen on Apple, leave us a review because that's super helpful as well. We also have a YouTube channel. So if you would like to watch your podcasts, and see if I am in the upstate New York Adirondacks, where I am recording from today, or if I'm at home in my office at my house, you can follow our YouTube channel. Now, it's Justice for Orphans is the YouTube channel, and all of our podcasts, the video version, are posted there. So we want to make sure to let you know about that. So now to our guest. I am super excited to bring to you Miss Maggie May. She is an adult who was born with FASD. She happens to be the very first person ever to be diagnosed with an FASD in Ireland. Maggie speaks internationally about the impact prenatal exposure to alcohol has had on her life. She provides advice for parents and caregivers of people with FASD and supports individuals like herself who are living with FASD. Maggie also runs monthly online support in social groups for kids, teens, and adults living with FASD in 5 different countries. Maggie is an ambassador for FASD Awareness UK and the FASD Red Shoes Rocks Ireland ambassador. She also is a member of the International Adult Leadership Collaborative of FASD Changemakers, and she is making a change. Please welcome Maggie May. Hi, Maggie.
Hi.
I'm so excited to have you on the show. I got to connect with you for the first time in our support group, where you came and shared your story, and all of our members were just engrossed in they hung on your every word. You were so inspiring and encouraging. So I can't wait for our listeners to get to hear from you as well today.
Thank you for having me.
It's an honor. And I know you generally live in Ireland, but you've been touring the United States and Canada somewhat, and you're coming to us from Canada today.
Yes, I am from the rainy little part of Vancouver.
So, There you go. So, well, I love to start with the beginning of a guest's story. So would you share a little bit about your childhood and kind of how you came to where you are today?
Of course. So I was raised in foster care in Ireland, but I was one of the lucky stories where I had a total of 2 placements for my entire life. And the second placement became my forever home where I got adopted. So I grew up in rural Ireland where it was very, quiet, and there's like grass on the roads and everywhere, and it was very peaceful. And I guess I got a diagnosis very fortunately when I was with my second placement. But I wasn't told until I was 14. So I kind of have 2 sides of the coin of have a diagnosis but not knowing. So everyone's always like, oh, well, you got a diagnosis really young. And I'm like, yes, I did. I was about 5 or 6, but I wasn't told, so I didn't know. And also in Ireland, FASD is not a recognized disability. So yes, I had a diagnosis, but it really didn't benefit me in a lot of ways, until much later on in my life. So I kind of went through my journey of, not understanding meltdowns and why I kept making the same mistakes and why I guess things were harder for me to understand than the rest of my peers, things like mathematics and just they were having a much easier time of transitions between subjects and lunch times and everything, whereas I would just be freaking out. And so, it was a lot of meltdowns at home with my parents of, they knew why I was acting the way I was. So, they were very lenient and, they'd, at this time, mobile phones were not a thing. And my mom be bringing Germany and Sweden and, just looking for any advice that would help me. So she made a lot of international connections, which I now have the pleasure of also having, which is very nice. And so, there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes that looking back now, I'm like, oh, that's why they were doing things like that. An example, in class when my teacher could just tell I was done, they were like, Maggie, can you take this blackboard wiper to the next classroom? Me being me didn't even think, like, oh, we don't have blackboards anymore. We've moved on to whiteboards, so I don't know why I need a blackboard wiper. But actually all I needed was that like 2-minute break from the classroom to walk to the other classroom for my brain to like reset. And so looking back now, I'm like, now it all makes sense. And so when I was about 14, I got a new social worker, and she was like, well, of course you can tell Maggie that she has this diagnosis. It's her diagnosis. And I remember this because my foster mom at the time did it very well. And she just explained to me, Maggie, do you know when you get a mosquito bite and you're told you're not allowed to itch it, but it's really scratchy and you end up itching it even though you know it's going to make it worse? That's what it was like for your birth mom when it came to alcohol. And when it was explained to me like, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And I've never ever held anything but respect towards my birth mom. I'm her greatest advocate in relation to she was let down herself. And so I've nothing but respect and love for her. So I was told when I was 14, and it kind of, I'd been told I'd had ADHD when I was much younger and stuff, and I knew a few people in my class had ADHD, so I just thought, oh, everyone has FASD. It's just another alphabet. Just okay. I didn't think anything of it until I was much older. And it was about, I was just finishing high school, and a lot of my friends were, talking about going to university and driving and moving out. And, my parents had to have a very difficult conversation with me, being like, Maggie, you're not there yet. We don't know if you're ever going to be able to move out. Or, in fairness, driving, I can understand why. I'd be a terrible driver. So, and that for me was really the start of my own advocacy journey, where I went through this, I guess, depression period of not blaming my birth mom, but being like, why me? This isn't fair. Why? I didn't ask for this. And my adoption had just gone through 3 months before I turned 18. And my mom had been training foster parents, social workers, teachers about FASD for many years. But due to safeguarding, she could never use my name, but she'd reference hypothetically me and all my lovely learning experience that I've taught her along the way. And when I became 18, she was like, do you want to come with me? Because this is your journey, this is your story. And so I went for my first time, and I did what I'm pretty much doing here, just talking about what it's like, strategies that helped, challenges that I guess make sense in my brain and maybe not in other people's brain. And I remember at the end, the foster parents came up to me and just said, "You just described our daughter to a T. Like everything you just described, our daughter does. And actually, we're going to go and use those strategies." And I remember a year or two later, I bumped into them and they were like, "Thank you." Meltdowns have like pretty much disappeared. And actually, our daughter's now being understood by us. We can understand why things are happening the way they are, so we can advocate for her before things become an issue. And for me, that was my turning point where I was like, I can stay in this kind of depression rush of this life isn't fair and oh, it's not fair, I can't do this and this, or I can do something different. I have FASD for the rest of my life, and I can help make other people's lives easier by helping connections and understanding happen. From me talking about my experiences. And that was really the day I really started being like, okay, this is where I want to go in life. And I've been doing it for now nearly 10 years. Yikes, I feel old now. But yeah.
Wow. I love, and I want to just everything you said, maybe I have all these questions swirling around. So hopefully I'll be able to get them out and remember them. But have you ever met your birth mom?
Yeah.
I did.
And I've met all my birth siblings. But we every year I'd meet them 4 times a year. And then as I got older, as my life got a bit busier, it became a little bit less. But yeah, no, I met her, and when I asked to be adopted, I was in a room with her alone, and we just talked about why, and she knew I never blamed her, and she never blamed herself. She was also able to look on. Actually, she was let down by supports around her. So no, we weren't close, but we had a relationship of some kind.
Very good. I'd love to hear that. And that you respect her and understand that her own life circumstances led to, when she didn't get the support that she really needed, because I don't believe any mom would choose to intentionally harm. And so many women don't even know they're pregnant initially, right? And they can be drinking socially. So lots of causes there. So I love that part of your story. And then, so you didn't know till you were 14, but what we now call them symptoms, right, of FASD, and you've mentioned like the ADHD part and like that, and having a hard time with transitions. If you were to list them off, what other symptoms of FASD or challenges that you faced as a kid, and even today maybe, what were those things? So in case, I'm hoping parents will hear you talk and say, oh, my kid does that.
Oh yeah. A huge one is lack of impulse control, especially when I was younger. I didn't really understand the concept of ownership. So if I'd see something, I would take it, whether it was money, chocolate, anything. That was a huge one. But then what also came into it is I've also short-term memory. So I'd forgot I'd take it. And so it would just make things much worse I'd see a chocolate bar on the counter in my house, so I'd eat it, and then 4 hours later, my mom might be like, "Has anyone seen the chocolate bar?" And I will have forgotten I ate it. And then they go into my room on the start, and they find it, and it was always a bit of two sides. They think I was lying until they're like, actually, she actually genuinely does not remember eating it. And so they had to learn to be able to kind of read between the lines of if it was genuine or if I was just trying it on. So that was a huge thing. Memory was a huge thing. Just forgetting, my parents would be like, "Maggie, can you go and get me my glasses from the kitchen?" And I'd make it to the dining room and I will have already forgotten what I'm meant to be getting. And that made it also very difficult in school, where, we'd learn how to do addition, and we get sent home with 10 questions, and I would be there for 3 hours and it would be like I've never seen these before. I had no idea how to do them, and teachers were very much less lenient, and really just didn't understand and thought I didn't want to do my homework when genuinely it was like I've never seen them before. There was no recollection of how to do it. And it would lead to quite a few meltdowns because I get frustrated, my parents would be getting frustrated, being like, Maggie, they wouldn't give you homework that you don't know how to do. So that was another thing. Organizational skills are a huge one that I even struggle with even now. Keeping my room tidy is a no-go at all. It gets to the point where I find things on my floor I forgot I owned, and it's a shock every time. I'm like, oh, this is nice. Oh. And so, we've tried techniques, lots of them from stickers to labels to, having a system and wardrobes. I just enjoy having a wardrobe, clothes on the floor. Just, yeah. And so we realized pretty early on, and that it just was that part of my brain was affected a lot more. And so what we had been doing was I pay a cleaner out of my own allowance who'll just come in and help me tidy my room. I'll do it with her, but at least we know it'll be clean. Because for me, it got to a certain age where even my parents like, you're an adult, we don't want to be going through all of your private stuff. That's not okay. And so we did that, and that was also teaching me responsibility of, okay, this is something I'm going to struggle with, so I need to make accommodations. And just, I think, boundaries of understanding. My parents and my friends and stuff were like, oh, if I'm planning for a trip, everyone else goes out the window. It's only about Maggie. And that's very true because of the way I am. I can't think about like, oh, well, I have to be packed. It doesn't matter if my little sister isn't packed or my older brother needs help packing. No, I need to make sure I have everything I need. And that's very common for people with FASD. And very often people think it's them being selfish, but for us, it's just a survival thing of we need to make sure we have everything we need, which means we can't focus on anyone else's needs until we are 100% sure ours are met or that we have everything we need. I'm a type of packer that will pack, unpack, pack again, and then an hour before we're meant to be leaving, I'll have to unpack everything again because I'm so sure I've forgotten something. And it drives my family crazy when it comes to trying to get ready. So.
Wow. So everything you listed, I'm very familiar with because I have two young adults with an FASD, both with fetal alcohol syndrome. So you said that your mom started training people about FASD. So how did your mom learn? And then, what were those things that she learned that helped you at home? As she began to learn about it, what were those strategies she began to implement at home to support you?
Yeah, so like I said, my mom had made a lot of international connections. She bought every FASD book under the sun. And so, her and her friends set up an organization in Ireland, FASD Ireland. Back then it was known. And they would just go around and they'd be invited to go and train because even though it wasn't a recognized disability, when my parents and her friend used to go and talk, a lot of social workers were like, oh, wait, we've got a kid in our care who sounds exactly like that. Oh, okay. We don't have a diagnosis, but actually, well, it won't do anyone any harm. And so, and where we are in Ireland, it's very basic. It was very, 101. It wasn't anything major, but from all the feedback and, occasionally we'll bump into these foster parents or the teachers as they retire and stuff, they're like, thank you. Because actually, instead of punishing this child for not being able to do something, we're like, okay, we need to think outside the box. And I think that's one of the major things my mom really contributed, especially with me, was just she had to think outside the box. And she had 3 biological kids herself. And so for her and my dad and the whole family, it was like, you have to throw any rule book that you had out the window. she was letting me get away with things that she would never dream of letting her own kids get away with as they were growing up. And just for her, she had to also understand that, every day is a new day. There's no point holding on to things that happened yesterday because I will have already forgotten them. And that can be really difficult, especially when I was younger. And we might have gone to bed on a fight, and of course that might have stayed with my mom. Whereas I wake up the next day completely forgotten about it and acting like everything's fine and not even acknowledging it because I've forgotten. And this just drives my whole family crazy. Because they're like, this is unresolved. We need to resolve this, and I'm like, resolve what? I don't know what you're talking about. What? Oh, did I have a meltdown yesterday? Oops. So that was a huge thing. But I think what's really stuck with me is my mom came across this thing of she has to explain me to the world and the world to me. And that's really how it had to be, where everyone else had to be explained to why Maggie was doing this or why Maggie was jumping like a kangaroo at a wedding, or and I had to explain why this was okay, this wasn't okay, and why people were reacting the way they were reacting from my actions, because I had no idea. It was like, no. And so that's really where our relationship has been. Like, me and my mom have this amazing relationship. It's changed as I've gotten older, and I haven't really needed her as my advocate anymore. But there's things, little meltdowns. And my mom was very smart. She always choose your battles very wisely. If it's not hurting anyone and it's not going to be drastic, then dyeing my hair. It was always that one I fought her on a lot, and she was like, you know what? It's not a permanent tattoo, so you know what? You can dye your hair. It's fine. It'll grow out. And of course, other people are like, oh my gosh, she's not 18. You're letting her dye her hair and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, so it's her hair. Things like that. Whereas other things, she stood firm. Like, I wasn't allowed a phone until I was 16, at least. And even then, it came with a lot of parental controls at the time. So it was things like that, or all my friends were going to a nightclub, and I never went. And at the time, I thought she was the most uncoolest parent. I thought I had the most uncoolest parent in the world. But looking back now, I'm like, oh, I would not have survived at a nightclub at all. Would have been way too stimulating and overwhelming. And the same with sleepovers. I think I've been on 2 sleepovers my entire 28 years. And they were just disasters each time. I was the kid who 4 a.m. was like, I want to go home. I want to go and sleep in my own bed. And so, so she knew me better than I knew myself growing up. Yeah.
Wow. So what kinds of supports did she provide you at home? Because as she understood, to help you be successful, because you said, the meltdowns can decrease. So what were some of those things that your mom did to help you?
So she would explain me to the rest of my family. I think, especially with my siblings, they're like, well, that's not fair. We didn't get away with that growing up. And so she really had to explain that actually this is what Maggie needs to be okay. And yes, you weren't allowed to watch that amount of TV, but actually Maggie needs that to stimulate her brain. That's her zone out time. Things that, I had a portable, I was never allowed a TV in my room, but I had a portable DVD player, which blew their mind. They're like, that's not fair. It's like, no, this is what Maggie needs. And also she just made accommodations in relation to, most parents would get angry when they're noticing they have $20 missing from their purse, where she was like, actually, this one was on me. I forgot to lock away my purse, so that temptation was in Maggie's direct. So actually, I'm not going to get angry with her. I need to take responsibility. A huge thing for me was also I would forget to eat because I don't feel hunger. Especially growing up, if I could, I would have gone days without eating and I wouldn't even noticed. So, she was the one that made sure I ate. And there was times where I was just so, I think, mentally exhausted stuff that I'd almost revert back to my dismaturity age of, I was 13 and I might have been a 6-year-old, where, she would actually just have to feed me because I just couldn't do it. And just she would recognize those signs. They also created like a sensory room. So they made a spare bedroom, and I had a trapeze, I had a tire swing from the ceiling, I had all the gymnastic mats, I had all the inflatable balls, and any sensory toy you can think of, I had. And that really, really made a difference because I learned a lot about what I needed to stimulate myself, to regulate myself. And, it cost them thousands. And they collected things over the years. Thankfully now I no longer need a sensory room. I've learned kind of more subtle, where I don't need to be swinging off a trapeze to regulate myself as much as I'd love to. But just things like that. And like I said, she would ring people in Germany and Sweden and the United States when she just didn't have an answer, to try and find an answer for me. And at that time, it was not cheap at all. So quite expensive phone bills. But she was just willing to do that so that she knew me, so that she could then help explain me and me to the world, and be that, I guess, mediator when things were really tough and I couldn't do it for myself.
Wow, I love that. Just curious before I go on to the next question. So you don't need a trapeze anymore, but what do you do to help regulate yourself?
So for me, I now always wear jewelry, whether it's rings or necklaces that I will just play with. Music has always, I think, been with me, and I don't need a Walkman anymore. Thankfully, my phone has every music under the sun. So when everything gets a bit much, I'll just put on headphones and I will zone out. And everyone knows, okay, don't bother Maggie if she has headphones in, because this is her just regulating herself. And so, things like that. And also I'm able to recognize when I'm getting overwhelmed, so I can then excuse myself of, I just need to go and take half an hour, so people don't bother me for half an hour. I just need to go and do whatever helps. Whereas before I couldn't, and then I just end up staying in these situations where I'm already overstimulated, and one thing's just going to push me over the edge. So meltdowns have definitely decreased as I've learned more accommodating techniques.
That's good news, especially for our parents that are listening. Because FASD isn't going to just go away, right? It's lifelong, but you've learned a lot of strategies and ways to help yourself so that you're not having all those meltdowns and things like that. So, as a young adult now, you said you're 28. What is life like for you? Because you still, when you're home, you do live with your parents, correct?
It's a lot different. I did in fact go to university, which, sadly was just as COVID came in. So I only did 1 year of my Bachelor of Arts in psychology. And then I haven't gone back. I do plan to go back at some stage. But I think what's really changed is I've become so insightful about myself. And in relation to, I can recognize myself about to have a meltdown, or I can recognize, oh, I'm getting overwhelmed here. I need to get out of the supermarket. I've learned, you have to eat at least 3 times a day, Maggie. You don't enjoy eating, but you need it to survive. So, I think also what's really helped is, a phone can do so much more than it used to. So, I have reminders of eat. You need to go shopping today. You need to, I very often use audio recording on my phone. So I'll be like, right, this is my shopping list, because by the time I've typed it out, I've forgotten what I'm typing. So I'll do things like that. I'm someone who, if I ever lose my phone, it is the end of the world, because my whole life of strategies and routines and reminders, everything's on my phone. But I never thought I'd be traveling halfway across the world on my own and dealing with, plane strikes and delays and, having to go on 4 different planes to get to where I'm going, and, navigating different airports on my own. Growing up, that was like, no, that's nope, nope. I was someone who would have an anxiety attack if I had to go up to the counter to pay for something. Very often here, this is what I want. Here's my card. Brother, go and pay for it, because I can't. I would just have so much social anxiety of, oh my gosh, if I say the wrong thing, or what if my card doesn't work? And then I'm just, it will. So I think, gearing up for this particular trip from Ireland to Canada, there was a lot of preparation, for me, in my mind at least, of, okay, if this happens, what do I do? The amount of people internationally I harassed of, okay, you flew internationally, what do I need to do? Just my suitcase, do I need to collect my suitcase and then go and bring it to the airline, or what do I do? And so, people were very nice, and they literally just explained it word for word multiple times, from different people. If this is what you have to do, if this happens, then you go to the desk. So that was a huge thing. And for me, that's definitely an achievement that's going to stay with me. But also things like, I know my limits. I now recognize, when it comes to working, I'm never going to be a full-time worker. I'm someone who can only ever work part-time, and there has to be a break in between. So for me, I was working, and it was like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, where I had then Tuesday and Thursday to literally just flop, where I would either be in my room, or I would just be watching movies or something, because I just needed to recover. So I'm someone who can only ever work part-time.
What kind of job are you currently employed, or at least when you were working, what were you doing?
I'm currently not, but before, so I've worked on an egg farm for 3 years. That was fun. Where I would be the one handling all the eggs. So we had about 1,500 eggs a day. And so they come in, I'd wash them, I'd stamp them, label them, grade them, box them, and get them ready for supermarkets. And that worked for me for about 3 years, because it was the same job, but it was very sensory, where I was dealing with water and towels and stamping, and it was practical things, but it was the same steps. There was never anything new, other than occasionally we get an egg that I couldn't grade because it was too small or too big to go into the box. So that was a really great job for me. And then I decided to go to university for a year, and then COVID happened. And then I was employed by an FASD organization in Ireland, where I was helped them out with their training, and I was kind of advocating them and stuff like that. So that I was with them for about a year and a half, before I went my own way. And since then, I run online FAC support groups in 4 different countries, I think, at this point. So that takes up a bit of my time, but I love doing it. And then I'm also part of the Adult Leadership Collaborative, we're international. And so we do a lot of, online presentations at conferences. We work a lot with researchers. So for the last 3 years, we've been part of creating My Health Coach, which is going to be an FAC app for adults with FAC. So that's also taken up a bit of my time. So I just been focusing on that. But for me, I've learned that I'm never going to be someone who can work in a desk job. It just doesn't suit my type of learning and my abilities of sitting still for that amount of time. So I'm always looking for more practical jobs of being able to go out and about, or I'm a qualified horticulturist. So I love growing plants, and I keep all the plants alive in my house, and things like that. So every time I look for a job, I'm like, no, it has to be as practical. Which, like I said, the egg farm job worked so well for me for those amount of years. And advocating and being able to go out because it's something new, but it's also something that I'm very comfortable with, of just talking. And it's for me, I don't care if I get paid or not. I'm not in it for the money. I'm more in it of, I wish someone had done that for me when I was growing up. I wish there was someone with FAC in Ireland who I could have looked up to or could have explained things, so that, I wouldn't have to have as many struggles of people just not getting it as there was in my journey growing up.
Yeah, I love that. And I was actually going to ask you a question about that, because you are a voice for people with FASD and very passionate about it and very well spoken. So I was going to ask you, what drives you, but you said it was you wish you had that when you grew up, when you were growing up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You can add to that.
Oh, well, I think also, for me, I never met anyone with FASD in person until I was 26.
Wow.
So, and I didn't know until I was 14. And so I'd always thought I was the only one out there. You know, I my saving grace was a group called Flying with Broken Wings, which was online Facebook group, and I remember joining it. And I was a lurker. I'd just be watching and never saying anything. But then I started being like, oh, wait a minute, I do that. Oh, wait a minute, I do that. Oh, okay. So it's not just a Maggie thing. Oh, okay. And I remember the weight it took off my shoulders of, oh, wait a minute, this isn't something I can control. This is my brain. This isn't a deliberate thing that I'm choosing to do. This is just my brain being quirky. Okay. Wait a minute, I can't help this. So actually, okay. And I remember just wait, because before that, I thought I was this terrible child who was like, there was a point where I was like, why did they adopt me? Because, I'd be having these meltdowns, or I'd be saying these terrible things that on any other given day I would never have said. So I remember finally reading and seeing other people online. I was like, oh, wait, oh, okay. Nope, I'm okay. This is fine. So for me, yeah, I wish I'd come across it earlier. But I also just wish there was a bit more awareness in Ireland where it would be okay for people to come out. And it's getting there, very slowly. But that's why I love being able to travel to different countries and then bring it back and be like, okay, well, in Canada, this is what they're doing. So let's see if we can somehow bring that into Ireland, or in the United Kingdom, let's see, and things like that. So yeah, it's like every day is a different day. I love it.
I love that. You mentioned impulse control problems. We know, I'm very familiar with that with my boys, very common in people with FASD. And then I've had a lot of parents ask me about, what about cell phones? What about the internet, right? Because people with impulse control problems, and I mean, any of us really, right? It's so easy to get sucked in, but I find that it's a very dangerous place. For my boys especially. Did you have any struggles when you were growing up and you finally got a cell phone? What was that like for you?
It was disaster.
Disaster.
I did a lot of irresponsible things when I got my cell phone. And my parents tried to monitor it as much as possible, but I was groomed online. I was encouraged to send pictures of myself online. that looking back now, bad idea. But at the time, I guess where my brain was, it was very much, okay, well, they're a grown up, so you trust grown up. So if they say it's okay to do it, then okay. And also it's very easy to get sucked in, where you don't even realize, oh, I struggle now, because I have to use my phone for so much of my advocacy work and my support work and stuff that I'm on it a lot. But things like TikTok now, I will accidentally spend 8 hours just scrolling and not even realizing it until I'm like, oh, oopsies. And so, I also put reminders on my phone of, Maggie, get off your phone for an hour, or Maggie, go outside, take a walk and don't bring your phone, or Maggie, go and give your phone to your parent, to your mom or dad, and just, read a book or something for half an hour. Because but even I struggle with, things like TikTok and Snapchat. I remember Snapchat was new and I was like, where I can't even keep up with that anymore. I've finally come to terms I'm old and not able to keep up with all these younger things. I think some people with FASD just cannot have a phone, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world at all. There's things, what my parents did before I had a phone, we do emailing. I'd have email pen pals, especially when it was international. And then other things, there is a lot of apps out there for parents so that they can be aware of what's happening. I know a huge one my parents now have when I was growing up, especially on their phone, was, for their credit card, that they had to get a code to their phone in order for their credit card to work. Which saved them when I would accidentally borrow their credit card and try and get things, and it wouldn't work because they just deny it on their phone. That was a very handy one. But yeah, for me, I've learned a lot of, okay, I can get sucked into things without realizing. So I need to put triggers out there for myself of, okay, alarm goes off the phone. Or, I grew up with the rule of thumb that, if it's something that you don't want your grandmother to see, you probably shouldn't be posting it or saying it. But also, I think on some of the social media apps, it can be really triggering when you have FASD because, because of my advocacy work, I have to put up with it. But, there can be a lot of hateful people out there who will use FASD as an insult of, oh, you look funny, you must have FASD. Or, just people who are not educated. So sometimes it can actually be really triggering for people with FASD to be on social media sites like TikTok and Facebook and things like that. And also a huge thing my parents did, and I'm grateful for growing up with, no phones in the bedroom. Every night my phone would have to be left out, and we had it written that they could go through my phone. My dad was an IT guy, so it was very difficult hiding anything from him. He would know where to go and look to go and find things that I deleted. So, just things like that of having boundaries of, if you're going to have a phone call, you have your door open or you do it in the living room or, things like that. And, it causes a lot of meltdowns because parents think it's not fair or kids don't think it's fair. But looking back now, I'm so grateful because I would have been so worse off if those hadn't been put in place. Because it also taught me, growing up now, I'm like, yeah, after a certain hour, I turn my phone off because I know I'll get sucked in and I will not sleep. So, just implementing those strategies early really helps later on when you're looking for a little bit of independence of, okay, this is normal. So I'm going to just put my phone off after 10 o'clock at night and not turn it back on.
Yeah, those are great advice. And I know any of us, anybody, you don't even have to have FASD to struggle with getting sucked in and you're scrolling away. Because I have to post a lot of things on social media for the work I do. And you might go on to post, but then you have to go on and check some things. And then, well, let me read. And then all of a sudden I'm scrolling and a half an hour later, I'm like, oh my goodness, I was only supposed to be on here for 5 minutes to just do this one thing. So I think any of us can get sucked in. But I do see, especially with my kids, they don't have that concept of time where all of a sudden, without some monitors put in place, they would just do that all day long. And so we've got some restrictions on their phones where it goes off at a certain time of the night, so they can't go on social media or anything like that. And it's not supposed to be in their room, but even if it happens to be in there without mom or dad knowing,
Yeah.
it's not, nothing, they're not going to be able to access anything. So we've had to do that. And I know a lot of parents deal with, kids just, it becomes a source of contention. There's a lot of meltdowns and whatnot, but I appreciate what you said, that you're so glad that they did those things back then, because it's helped you now. You know that you need to put those restrictions on yourself, which is wonderful. So most of our listeners are adoptive and foster parents, many raising kids with FASD. So Maggie, what would you like for parents and caregivers to know about what it might be like for their kids?
I think, the biggest bit of advice is just normalizing it. In our household, a meltdown is just Maggie having one of her days or having one of her Maggie moments of, every dinner table we talk about FASD, whether it's just that, hey, how was your day today? And I'd be like, oh, well, actually, I got really overwhelmed today because of this, or there was, and everyone in my family is now like detectives of having to read between the lines of, I'll be like, oh, I had a meltdown at the supermarket and I don't know why. And so we'll all kind of work together of, was it a smell? Was it a noise? Was it a certain day? Was there too many people? Did they change the supermarket around? Were things not where I was expecting them to be? And we kind of all work through it as a family together of figuring out what it was. So we've really normalized it. And in fairness, even my siblings have done research. So they're like, they know that, if we're going out for a day, they need to bring snacks, because if I don't have snacks, I get very short-tempered. I think they call it hangry these days. So they also do a lot of preparation. For me, I grew up in foster, and then my foster parent became my adopted family, and they never treated me any differently. They never judged me because I was having meltdowns. Did it suck? Yes. And did I break my parents a few times? Yes. Where they had to go into therapy? Yes. Because, and I will hold my hands up of, I was not an easy kid to raise at all. Sometimes I didn't even know why I was doing it, and my parents was like, we just don't know why you're doing this one. Give us time to figure out what this behavior is or this symptom is. Okay, give us time. But it really is challenging. And sometimes, especially I think for parents, they're like, there is no light at the end of this tunnel at all. Whereas I'm always like, stick with it, because we will become successes. That might look a little bit different than successes for people who do not have FASD. For me, sometimes like successes, I got out of bed today and I had a shower. Go me. And also I'm a huge advocate of just celebrate anything and everything, whether it's your individual member to take a shower today without needing reminded. That's a worthy celebration. Or hey, they ate their green vegetables that they hate, but they did it anyway. Good for them. Or they tidied a bit of their room, or they put laundry on. Everything small might seem really small to anyone, but when you have FASD, any cause for celebration is a huge thing, because we grew up always being told what we do wrong, whether it's from teachers or friends or parents of friends and stuff, oh, they did this, they did that. We always get told what we do wrong. Very often we don't get told what we do right. So any cause for, hey, you did a really good job today. And that was a huge thing in my house of every day. My parents would find something that would be a positive because I might have had 20 negatives from school that day of just bad day in school and teachers and everything. And so that's all I'd be, oh, terrible person. I had a meltdown in school and oh, everyone hates me. And oh, I don't want to go to school tomorrow because they're all going to be like remembering that I had a meltdown. And whereas my parents were like, Maggie, you ate all your lunch today. Well done. Congratulations. Hey, you did it. You rock. And all of a sudden it's, oh wait, that's positive. I did something good today. So I'm a huge advocate for that. But yeah, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel looks different for everyone, and that light might be a little bit way off in the future, or it might be closer. But if you stick with us, we do get there, and it's not an easy journey. But I also think successes are different for each individual. What I can do, other individuals can't do. What other individuals can do, I cannot do. So it's really individual. Look at it as an individual. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. And, I'm also an advocate that parents know their kids best. So if your kid needs to be in a supermarket jumping up and down like a kangaroo and everyone's staring at you, that's okay. You know your child best. You know what they need to do in order for them to be okay. So yes, you might get a few stink eyes from other parents or other parents giving you very unhelpful advice of parenting of this is what you should be doing, and just, yeah, thank you, and ignore it because what you're doing is right for your kid.
I love that. Such wise advice from your lived experience, and your parents sound like just wonderful people for sticking with you and pouring into you, and we can see the progress and your successes. And I love the fact that you're a change maker and you're out there advocating and telling the world about this, because the FASD community certainly needs more Maggie Mays, that's for sure. As we wrap up, Maggie, any last advice or words of wisdom or anything you would like to say to our listeners?
That you are doing a great job. And I know I never ever thanked my parents enough growing up for everything they took on. So I'm going to do it on behalf of just thank you. The fact that you're listening to this episode, or the fact that, you've connected, or, it means so much to us, and your kiddos might not be able to say it. So I'll say it on behalf of them, which is thank you. Because any little bit of education or any little information or FASD knowledge and stuff really goes a long way. And also a huge thing is don't drop strategies just because they're not working now. My parents had 500,000 different strategies that they would just rotate because it might not work when I was 11, but actually when I was 12, all of a sudden it just worked. So just because it doesn't work now, don't forget about it. Just come back to it, and every once in a while see if it might work this time. Because we change very quickly. We're very much like the weather sometimes. We just go through different seasons of what works now might work now and then doesn't work the next day, and then it might work in 3 months' time. So just keep rotating strategies and just communicate. There's a lot of now very helpful support groups and knowledgeable online forums and stuff. So don't be scared to ask questions because you think it makes you out to be a bad parent. In fact, if you're asking questions, you're being a good parent because you're acknowledging you don't have all the answers, and that's okay.
It's okay, but keep listening and keep learning, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So Maggie, thank you so much for all that you're doing on behalf of the FASD community. And thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story so transparently, and offering all of us parents and caregivers encouragement for our parenting journeys. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, what a wonderful conversation with an amazing young woman with FASD. So insightful. I'm blessed. I hope you all are. I do want to let you know that the Facebook group that Maggie referenced was called Flying with Broken Wings. So you can follow or join that Facebook group and stay connected with Maggie and others with FASD. It might be a group that if your kiddo is a little bit older, or is a young adult, it might be a group that you want them to get connected with, if you're permitting social media use there. So check it out. We will tag it in our social media when we post, and remind you in the show notes for this episode. So I hope you were inspired by my conversation today with Maggie. We have more guests coming up throughout the month of September as we focus on FASD Awareness Month. So thank you for being with us today. That's what I want to do, is encourage and equip fellow adoptive and foster parents and kinship caregivers, so that you understand really what's going on with your kiddos and how to best support them. Some of the things that Maggie had said, when she was talking, and I was like, I'm taking notes. It's like, she's like, normalize it. Talk about FASD with your kiddos so that they can come to understand their disability, whether it's formally diagnosed or not. Stick with your kiddo. It's going to be hard. She referred to all of those meltdowns she was experiencing, especially when she was younger, but her parents stuck with her. They offered those accommodations. They educated her, they educated others. And she said she does not have hardly any meltdowns now as a young adult. But if she does, they try to figure out why, what would trigger this. And she gave the example of the going to the supermarket, going to the grocery store and having a meltdown, and then figuring out, that the store rearranged where things are. Now, I have gone to a grocery store before, not one that I frequent all the time, but I knew where the stuff was because I used to shop there. And I popped in one day to run a really quick errand to get a couple of things that I needed for a party. And when I walked in, it was like half of the store. I had no idea where to find the mayonnaise. Like what happened? And I was frustrated, and I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So, factor in a person whose brain works differently. You can see where that could create panic. It can create anxiety. It can create a meltdown. So understanding how the brain works, celebrate their wins, no matter, it might be just you ate your lunch today. You remembered to eat lunch, go you, right? So we need to learn to encourage our kiddos and celebrate even the small things, because like Maggie mentioned, our kids go through whole days with feeling frustrated, feeling inferior, feeling like, why can't I do this? How come this is so hard for me? Just all of that. So if we can celebrate even, these little things, they're really big for our kids. And she said, everybody's success is different, right? It's different for everybody. So understanding that goes a long, long way. So, oh goodness, you can tell I'm excited about this episode, and I'm so excited about all of our upcoming shows this month. I hope you are too. Make sure that you find and follow this podcast, share it with other foster and adoptive parents as well. And make sure that you check out if FASD is sounding like, if this is resonating with you and you're like, oh my goodness, I think this could be my kid, right? You need to learn, you need to be curious, and you need to learn all you can. And a great place to start is our online workshops. And I have 2 free ones this month, as well as other ones. And we have a support group. So if you need a support group as a parent or caregiver, we have a support group just for you. And of course, find and follow us on social media, so you can know all about all of our upcoming trainings and things that are going on. Goodness. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I am grateful that you spent your valuable time with me today. I am thrilled to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans. And check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.